Welcome to the May meeting of the Commission on Aging. Thanks everyone for coming. I'm still hopeful that Joe Warren will show today. He may be running a little bit late. He is our guest speaker relating to the current status of the Darien Housing Authority's project over on Old Town Hall houses on the Post Road. So we'll see if that happens. If not, we'll invite him back for another visit. I saw from our last meeting, which I was unable to attend, that we were not able to have a quorum for purposes of the March and April minutes. So did everybody get a chance to review the March minutes? And what am I missing? I am missing my secretary. Okay, we're still on TV 79, so I will be the secretary for this meeting. You're welcome. And so, long story short, are there any changes in the March minutes? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve? Thank you. Second? Thank you. So moved. And all in favor? Aye. April minutes. I noticed one change that even though I wasn't here, I noticed that she mentioned that there was a quorum, and then Jennifer said there was not a quorum. So for people who are here, I assume there was not a quorum, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So as a result, I'd like an amendment of the minutes by somebody who's actually there, okay, to say we did not have a quorum. Fair enough?
We did not.
Okay, thank you. Any other changes to the April minutes?
There was one change.
Go ahead.
In talking about not-for-profits that support younger people in problems, the organization is Abilis, A-B-I-L-I-S.
Yeah.
We had it listed there as Abilis.
Got it.
And it's not really located in Stamford. I think its headquarters in Greenwich,
Okay.
but it serves Fairfield County.
Okay, got it. I will make that into the May minutes for amending the April minutes. We'll have two amendments. Any other amendments to the April minutes? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the April minutes as amended? Thank you. Second, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We'll now turn it over for the Mather Center report. Beth.
Okay, May is Older Americans Month, and the theme this month was Connect, Create, Contribute to Your Community. So we always have a diversified schedule, but we try to do a little bit more of things that we haven't done before, and also in celebration of our 5th year in the Mather Center. We survived our chef being on vacation, and we used Jennifer's Kitchen as a caterer, who did it was a Darien business who did a wonderful, wonderful job for us. Made a very stressful 9 days wonderful. So just kudos out. Want to just give a real thanks to them for being so wonderful, and not only wonderful food but wonderful service too. Today, the Veterans Corner, I just want to remind you that Ramon Agosto is back again. He's an officer from the VA. He comes once a month now, and he's with us from 12:30 to 2. And the date changes, so I'll always let you know what the date is, but it's on our website, so he's here today. And he's also comes into town by request. So once you meet with him, and he has your phone number, he sets other appointments up, so specifically, so until the issue that you need resolved is resolved, he stays on the case, and he's awesome. We also got an opportunity for OsteoStrong for Darien to do bone density screening right in the center. So we've had this kind of offering for different kinds of businesses that are going to service seniors. We just did the vein clinic, which was also another excellent opportunity for free service and advice. Always passing people to their doctors, never passing people to themselves, but to their doctors. We also did on May 8th, in conjunction with Yale University and Maplewood, an evening program for caregivers. Again, almost 40 people we had, and it was Dr. Verano, who's a geriatrician and an internist, who did a topic on when it's time from a doctor's perspective, and that was related to in-home care, assisted living, and long-term care from a doctor's perspective. Incredible presentation, and we were there till 8 o'clock at night with her answering questions. So it was again, showing the need for early evening programming. It was supposed to be 5:30 to 7, but it went a little later, which is fine. But it shows that caregivers are in need of good educational programs and really take advantage of them, whether they are offered. And we are doing something fun on the 23rd of May. It's Lucky Penny Day. So we're having a luncheon that's related to pennies, not pennies in the food, but related to pennies. And a wonderful entertainment, the Sedgwick Sisters, and everybody who attends will get a lucky penny. So.
Very cool. Any questions for Beth?
They're in hard, it's about 12:30.
Well, I think That's Your Strong is tomorrow, correct?
It is May 16th, yeah.
So, yeah, it's great. I've been going there just personally for people to know, to improve bone density, and I'm gonna get another scan soon. I'll let you know, but I think it's been a good thing. It's really isometric kind of exercises that are non-traumatic on the bone, so it's good.
Other questions for Beth?
Was the Maplewood presentation taped at all?
It was not.
Okay.
It was not, but it would have been good to be taped because that was an excellent presentation. So I probably should do a better job in trying to connect with somebody, but I also have to, it's also about the doctor, whether the doctor wants to be filmed or not. And lots of times they don't want to because they are doing this kind of in kind and they have to get permission from Yale too, so.
Other questions for Beth? Hearing none, thank you, Beth. I'd like to welcome our secretary. I will drop you an email, okay, as to what happened earlier in the meeting, which is pretty straightforward. April minutes approved, a couple of changes to the May minutes, and then, and also like to welcome Joe Warren. Thank you for coming.
Sorry I'm late.
You're fine. Actually, you're not up on our agenda yet. You're doing just fine. It's great. Thanks so much. And so, speaking of agenda, the next one before Joe Warren is our Human Services report. Ally.
Morning. Not too much to report. We continue to accept renters rebates applications. We haven't heard if they've cut the grants yet, but hopefully it won't be too significant. But each year they seem to cut it a little bit. We're still waiting to hear about the asset test for the Medicare Savings Program. It hasn't been decided yet, so we're crossing our fingers. We have had some calls from seniors who were concerned about it, needless to say. I attended the annual Municipal Veterans Representative training, and we've updated our website. We have some helpful information and links on there, so if anyone's interested. And we continue to have our monthly gatherings with at home at the senior center for the Old Town Hall residents who've been relocated, and they find it really supportive. I think they love that connection. Our staff in my department calls everybody the day before to remind them, and we've had a good turnout. So it's good. That's about it.
Great. Any questions for Ally? Hearing none, thanks so much. And now we turn it over to Joe to give us an update on the Old Town Hall Houses project.
Well, first of all, good morning, everybody. I'm happy to tell you that things are moving along just fine over at Old Town Hall Houses. Any of you who've driven by the site recently know that all the old buildings are completely gone. There was some discussion about what was going on with all the dirt on the site, these big piles. Essentially, no material has been brought onto the site. The material that you see piled up on the site is from the site. What we have to do is, as we go through and demolish things, all of that material has to be sorted. Some of it gets ground up, some of it gets sifted, so that we determine what we're going to use it for on the site when we finish with the construction, or as we go through the construction. Some of the rubble from the buildings itself, the brick and mortar that was used in the old buildings, was ground up and will be used as backfill for the footings. Some of that will be used as underlay for the new parking lot. Any of the gravel and topsoil that was available when we pulled the lawns up, we sorted out all of the growth material, but the dirt itself we'll keep and we'll use again when we put in. Now, we won't have anywhere, a fairly large lawn because of the size of the building, but we'll use that material. The thought process as of right this minute is that this site will be material negative. That is, we will be moving material off-site rather than bringing more material on-site. As we start, what's going on today? What are they up to over there right now? People drive by and say, why did they move the residents out so soon? There's nothing happening. Nothing could be farther from the truth. What they're doing right now is beginning all the underground construction work. There will be no basement on this building. This building will be built on grade. However, we have to put in underneath what will eventually be the parking lot area some rather large detention basins to hold runoff. You have to remember, when we're finished, because there will be less grass area than there was before, an awful lot of surface area, impermeable surface, the roof of the building and the parking lot itself. Every time it rains, all the runoff from those impermeable surfaces has to go somewhere. What we don't want is for it to go off the property immediately into the storm drains. It will overload the storm drains. So what we're doing is on site, we'll bury underground some what they call detention basins. The water will go into them and then be released slowly into the surrounding ground so that we won't overload anything. But that all that work has to be done before you can start going up. So while what's going on there now doesn't look very visible, you just can't do the building without doing all this underground work first. The ambulance has been relocated, finally. The flagpole has been relocated. We're still waiting for the flagpole to be installed at its new location, but it is now resident at Spring Grove Cemetery, which is where it will stay. That flagpole and monument will not come back to Old Town Hall houses. It will stay over at Spring Grove Cemetery. There'll be a flag at Old Town Hall houses, but we're not exactly sure where we're going to put it.
How did you determine the flagpole being moved there? Was that the Monuments and Ceremonies Committee, or how did that happen?
That was very interesting. Monuments and Ceremonies, we contacted everybody. We contacted Board of Selectmen, Monuments and Ceremonies. We contacted the veterans. To be very honest with you, number one, nobody wanted the flagpole. Flagpole had no particular use for anybody. It's big, it's tall, very difficult to move. Nobody was interested. The monument, nobody wanted. The Monuments and Ceremonies looked at the monument, and there was nobody named on that monument that is not named on another monument somewhere else in town. So the thought was, do we really need that monument? The counter to that was, the monument's been there for a very long time. We don't want to just throw it away. So the veterans very graciously accepted putting it over at the VFW hall without the flagpole.
Yeah.
Take the flagpole off and just put the monument. Spring Grove Cemetery very graciously said, there's a spot just as you're looking from the post road just to the right of the hill. And if you put a flagpole there, the flagpole in front of police headquarters with the sailors and soldiers around it is on one side. The fireman's monument is on the other side, and this thing is almost directly in the middle, and it will look really nice from the post road. So Spring Grove said, we'll take it. And that's what we decided to do. And we made arrangements privately to get it uprooted and moved.
I'd like to have seen that flagpole move down the post road. That must have been true.
It was Freddie Ginestra, who owns a construction company, volunteered to bring his equipment over there in a flatbed trailer. And then, God love the Darien Police Department, they sent a couple cars up to escort us, and we brought it right down the middle of the post road.
Awesome.
And there are
And
pictures.
relocated it. Had to rush a little bit at the end because there's always that little slip in coordination. There was a funeral at Spring Grove Cemetery scheduled for about an hour after we got out of it. We had all this heavy equipment in there. We had to quickly get the thing laid down and get out of there before the funeral. But that's what makes life interesting.
Exactly.
But other than that, as far as the Old Town Hall houses, we appreciate what you guys do with meeting with our residents because that keeps them in touch with each other. This is one of the issues that you always have when you scatter a population. How do they keep in touch with each other? And we're very happy. A few of our residents do come to our monthly meeting. For the most part, the residents seem satisfied with the way things are going. We have a couple who, again, they think we moved them out too early. We didn't have to move them as early as we did because they think that they're in a place they're not really comfortable with for much longer than they need to be. The reality is, we could not wait until the last minute. When space was available, we had to take advantage and move our residents so that when we got close to the date we wanted to start demolition, we weren't hung up because one or two people hadn't yet been moved. So we did it as expeditiously as we could, and we're pleased with the way it all turned out. We're very pleased with the construction to date. Now comes the exciting part, because within another month, you'll start actually seeing things start coming up out of the ground. But for at least the next month, month and a half, virtually all the work that's being done there is going to be underground. You're not going to see a lot. You'll see equipment moving around. Dirt piles will move from one place to another, but you're not going to see anything dramatic going on until we get all the underground stuff out of the way. Then we can start building up.
Are you still where you want to be in terms of timing? Is this still...
It's hard to tell, again, because you don't know what obstacles you might come into ahead. If you look at our original schedule, we think we're about a month ahead of schedule. Now, I don't want anybody to run out of here and say, oh, they're ahead of schedule. We built the schedule so that if something does come up, we have time to deal with whatever comes up. If we get a late shipment of material, if in digging the holes to put this stuff in underground, something pops up that we weren't expecting, although we've done boreholes in all the places, there's nothing going on there that would really shock us. But you put contingencies in because you don't want something to come out of the woodwork that totally blindsided you. So we have time in the schedule. If we can finish a little ahead of schedule, our goal, the housing authority, the contractors that are working on it, is to get this thing done as expeditiously as we possibly can, because we're out of pocket the money to keep our residents located elsewhere. The way this all works is our residents continue to pay rent to us at the exact same rate they were paying when they were in our building.
Are you going to cover the difference?
We have to cover the difference, plus we covered all the moving expenses. But when you look at market rate versus what we were charging, those differences add up, and every month we have to pay the difference. And so we'd like to keep that as condensed as we possibly can. So that's where we're at. We're excited. There'll be 55 units when we're done. When are we going to open up the list? When will we start taking applications for new residents? At least 6-8 months from now, because we're not going to do that until we are very sure where the end date is going to be. I don't want to tell somebody we'll have an apartment for you a year from this July. So in July of 2020, we'll have an apartment for you. If in fact that apartment's not going to be ready until September, because if somebody's making living arrangements, it's easy for us to control our existing residents. We have leases with the new landlords. We've told them 1 year plus month to month until the building is ready. So that's all set. We're not worried about that. But a new resident might be debating right now whether to sign another 1 year lease with the expectation at the end of the year, I'm going to have a new apartment to move into. Well, suppose they sign that lease and then the construction takes an extra 6 months. Now what do we do? And so we don't want to put anybody in that position. So we will wait until we have a much, much better handle on exactly when the occupancy date is going to be. And then we will open up the list and start taking applications. I will tell everybody right now, using the Heights as an example, when we did that, the list was open for less than a week. We had that many people waiting in the wings for this housing. And I would imagine we're looking at the same situation here.
We get calls all the time.
Yeah, when we make the announcement,
multiples a week.
when we make the announcement that the list is open, we expect to get flooded with applications immediately.
How do you know how it'll work yet? So is it the lottery system?
Well, first of all, we're developing a website for Old Town Hall houses. Second of all, once we get all of that done, and it should be sometime next month, we'll have a website up and running. Any announcements as to when the applications are being accepted will be on that website. The town's website will have a pointer to get to that website. Very soon, within the next couple of months, it will no longer be called Old Town Hall Houses. We don't know what it's going to be called, but it will have a new name. It was called Old Town Hall Houses because that was the site of the Old Town Hall.
Right.
But there are some of you in the room who remember, some people who may not. Before it was Town Hall, it was Royal School.
Yeah.
So when we look at renaming that location, we may look as far back as the Royal School days. And the name may have something to do with the old Royal School. But it will no longer be called Old Town Hall Houses. That name was very useful in its day. It's outlived its usefulness. We'll find a more appropriate name for it. And then we'll start accepting applications. We'll put the applications into the order in which they were received. But because you get a flood in the very beginning, that first week, everybody, we can't hold somebody and say, you don't get to the top of the list because you were 26 minutes behind that person. That's just not the way it should be done. There will be, and don't quote me on this, but there will be probably 3 tiers of occupants in terms of income. Much as we did with the Heights, it'll be 25% area median income, 50% and 60% in order to get in there. So we will then hold a lottery, and we'll take the applications that we have and we will slot them in. First of all, existing residents come back first. We think, not casting concrete yet, but we think there might be several residents of the Heights who would be more appropriately served at the Old Town Hall House. And if that's the case, we will move them next, and then new applicants, and we'll put them in some lottery in order of when they get accepted.
The existing wait list before the new ones, too.
Yeah, the existing wait list will, but now the existing wait list, it's a funny one, and we still have to work out the details of how we're going to handle this. There are people who are on the existing wait list. I think there's only 17 names on the existing wait list right now. Excuse me, but the existing wait list has names on it who are not ready to move in. We call them when we have an apartment available. When we have an apartment available, well, I like where I am now. I have a 1-year lease. I'm not ready. So several years ago, we changed the procedure. It used to be you got a call. If you were on number 1 on the list, you didn't accept it. You stayed number 1 on the list. Now you get to reject the apartment twice. If you reject a 3rd time, you go to the bottom of the list. So we have to work out the detail. And the only reason for doing that is we're not trying to be harmful anymore, but we want to give people who are waiting on the list an opportunity to move up on the list. So all those details are in process to be worked out. How are we going to deal with all of that when we get ready to occupy this building? And I don't have a really good answer for you. These are not simple questions. These are people's lives we're dealing with, and we want to make sure that what we ultimately wind up with is fair to everybody, or as fair as we can possibly make it. Expectations, we're excited. These are going to be new buildings, going to have all the latest and greatest. There are going to be people in town who are disappointed. There are people in town who are disappointed right now. I get calls regularly. I'm not a total unknown in this town. A lot of people know me, and I get calls. Joe, can you get me on the list? No. I will put you on. I have a list. I have a personal list of people that I know that I will call the minute I know that the application list is open. But it's up to them to get their name on the list. I can't. That's not my job. Quite frankly, I don't want it to be my job. I will do what I can to facilitate things, but we can't. People can't just call and say, "Put me on the list." It doesn't work that way. It's not going to work that way. Other than that, I don't know what else to tell you. I'll answer any questions. Anybody's got any questions?
Questions for Joe?
We're excited about the project. It's going to be fun. Just to let you know what's going on in the background. Financing. the way this thing gets financed is there's a whole variety of income tax credits, grant money, and bonding, and actual loans from banks. And get compiled to come up with the pile of money, and we do it in two pieces, one for the demolition and one for the actual construction. And then when it's all done, you get one bank to give you a mortgage for the whole thing, and you pay off what you got to pay off of the stuff that got you going, and you write a 30 or 40-year mortgage, which is called the permanent lender. And it turns out the permanent lender was giving us some grief. They got the money, they're ready to, they like the project, they're ready to join in. But normally you would expect a lease, a mortgage on the buildings that you're building, not on the ground they sit on. The housing authority owns the land, the LLC that's doing all this development owns the buildings. So normally the LLC gets a mortgage on the buildings. Now the permanent lender wants a mortgage on everything. So the first thing we did was we looked at the deed. There are restrictions in the deed. The deed is restricted to low and moderate income housing for seniors, period. That's what the property is deeded for. There are easements to the deed. The housing authority, when the town gave us the land, they also gave us the little antique house next door to it at 701. That's restricted. That's a historic building, and that's restricted. The town has an easement for the use of 6 parking places. That's how the ambulance wound up over there. So all these things are in the deed. So when you look at putting a mortgage on that deed, the first question I asked all the lawyers was, do the easements and restrictions survive the mortgage? And the answer was absolutely yes.
Yeah.
So now I don't care. You want to put a mortgage on the property? What do I care? If the easements and restrictions did not survive the mortgage, then no way am I giving them a mortgage on the land, because the bank now has a reason to want to foreclose. Mm-hmm. Given the restrictions, the land has no value. If it had no restrictions, it's a very valuable piece of property on the Post Road in Darien. But with all the restrictions, it has no value. So if heaven forbid something goes really, really wrong, and we have to do some finagling with the mortgage, the incentive to the bank is to find a way to refinance. Because they don't want the land. They don't want it. They just wanted to know that there wasn't any encumbrances if they were to force the foreclose. So that's all been squared away. Then there was some haggling about whether the house was included in the whole package, and they were talking about a subdivision, and that's all been taken care of. But behind the scenes, I know it all looks like a flat lot and not a lot of activity going on. Behind the scenes, there's a lot of activity that goes on every day. Sign this document, sign that document, resubmit that document, look at that document. It's all getting done. And you know, like I said, we're happy about where we're at. Any questions, comments? What do you want to know?
Joe, we thank you for coming. Can we have you come back maybe again in the fall, in October
Absolutely.
or November? That'd be
Absolutely.
awesome. I want to thank you for all your work on the Housing Authority and within the Rhoton Fire Department.
We'll let you all know when we're ready to do the actual formal groundbreaking.
Perfect.
We put that off and put it off. And it's just a formality. There's nothing significant about it. But sometime in the next month or so, we'll get around to doing it.
Cool.
You know, we'll take a picture with the shovels, and it'll be in the paper that we have formally broken ground on this new project. We didn't want to do it when all the hubbub was going on with demolishing the buildings. But the buildings, so you know, and I appreciate you mentioning the fire department, and it was nice to see Kate at the dinner. Joe's son belongs to our fire department, and he was home from college for the dinner. That we, all 3 fire departments, used the buildings for drill before we tore them down. They went in and held drills. We do things like forcible entry and ventilation. So these buildings were going to come down anyway. We were able to cut holes in the roofs and break down doors and things like that, so guys get an opportunity to practice these things on a building we're not familiar with, which was really Much appreciated. And all three departments participated. So here we are.
Thank you, Joe.
Yes. I'm going to leave you. I have
Absolutely, we'll let you depart. Thank you very much.
Start a run. Thank you for inviting me.
Great.
Let me know, and sometime in the
We'll-
fall I'll
yep,
come back
absolutely.
and let you know
You'll get that
what's
email. Thanks,
going on.
Joe.
Let you know. Take care. Have a good one.
Bye, Joe.
Great. Moving on to old business. One issue I noted from the April meeting was there was a discussion of the Commission on Aging's role, okay, relating to whether we should expand that role to include folks with special needs and things of that nature. Since I wasn't here, I at least want to put in my 2 cents, which is, I think we have a conflict of interest if we do anything other than the aging. And a classic example is with Jerry's son, David. That is, David develops buildings. I love to call up David and harangue him and say, David, we'd love some more housing for the elderly, right, for seniors, right? And David, of course, will have coffee or whatever. But if we had a dual role, I'd have a conflict of interest. Am I advocating for seniors? Am I advocating for folks with special needs? Whatever. So I would simply say to those folks who want to form a commission or a group or things of that nature, absolutely no objection, go for it. But I don't think it's appropriate within the Commission on Aging because we would run into conflicts of interest between who we're advocating for, since that is our number one goal is advocacy, okay? Making sure that the people on the list at the building stay on the list, making sure that we get proper crosswalks at Corbin Drive, making sure that seniors get priority for buildings to the extent we can. All of that senior related, and as an attorney especially, I am all the more cognizant of the issue of conflict of interest and how I could find myself effectively advocating against the elderly if I'm advocating for some other group. Fair enough? Any thoughts? Any more thoughts on that? Nope. Okay. Good.
I have mixed feelings about that.
Well, I know, but we can't do it.
So,
We
yeah.
can't do it. It's not us. And as if we do that, we've got a complete mixed interest group. In other words, the special needs folks have their own issues. We have our own issues, and they do conflict at points.
Well, no, I just meant, I think it was people with disabilities, not just special needs, but the way it's used today. So when you say crosswalks at Corbin, I mean, there may be people who use canes or wheelchairs
Absolutely.
who are crossing at Corbin, and they're not, elderly people. So, that kind of.
Well, we'll definitely benefit those folks, and whatever we're doing for the elderly should certainly help anybody
Okay.
with a cane or a walker or a wheelchair or whatever. I mean, no question. So if you happen to be 35 years old and you have those issues, you're going to benefit from what we're doing, no question. But my bigger concern is that I don't want to be in a position where there's a conflict of interest between our role within the town of advocating for the elderly, which has other benefits for those who have issues with physical mobility, no question. But I want to be clear what our role is so that we don't find ourselves on the wrong side.
And then I have another question related to that. When somebody who has a disability of any kind becomes a senior, do they then go into the, under the health, Commission on Aging services, or would they stay then, if there was a separate commission for disability, where would they?
Well, we're advocates. They would be for both.
Well,
I mean, in other words, if there was a separate commission for those who have disabilities, okay, or special needs, or call it what you wish, they would certainly be for both. In other words, as an advocacy group, we're looking to make sure that we can do the best we can, town, Peter, statewide, et cetera, nationwide, for our seniors, and to the extent that there are other benefits that benefit others, all the better. I mean, there's no question, for example, that our advocacy for the Mather Center has benefited a whole bunch of other people in this town, okay? So, yes, we advocated for the Mather Center for seniors, but there's no question that the secondary and tertiary effects have benefited a whole bunch of other people who don't even think about being seniors yet.
Okay, so I was interested with a few people on this task force for disabilities, so I guess we'll have to, talk to Jennifer and the other people and do something maybe separately.
I would agree, and talk with Jamie. I mean, in other words, see if Jamie and the first selectman will give you guys some sort of authority or whatever else you need to do that. In other words, and of course, anybody can do anything they want without town authority. The question is, how formal do you want this to be?
Right, and then how would we coordinate, say, for example, Medicare Savings Plan would also affect people who are not elderly people, but who may be disabled under Medicare. So, you know, there will be overlap.
And you guys could report back to us, much like my next stop, which is Gina. Gina, technically with At Home in Darien, is not part of the Commission on Aging, but nevertheless, as you see, she reports each month. So I'm glad to have reports from any task force affiliated with any other group, again, like Joe Warren. You know, so at the end of the day, I'm glad to have those reports and discuss whatever you're finding. I just don't want the Commission on Aging to find itself in a weird position of advocating in two different ways.
Right, and I think that came about because I think on a state level, that they've combined people with disabilities and aging. And so that was more kind of consistent with what they're doing on another level.
Right.
And so, I mean, but I can see your point as well.
Yeah.
It's just in the beginning stages. I think we're just trying to find where would be a good fit. And I did actually speak to Jamie and to Kate about it, and they did suggest bringing it up here to see if this was a good fit, because there are a lot of benefits that seniors and disabled people are eligible for housing,
Right.
At Home in Darien.
But again, the housing issue, again, is a classic conflict of interest. In other words, who are we advocating for? I'll give you an example. An able-bodied senior or a disabled 35-year-old. Both want to go into the wonderful place that David Genovese is putting into. I call. Who am I calling for? Right? As Commission on Aging member, I'm calling for that senior. I'm advocating for seniors to have that. And I'm not trying to be against anybody, but at the same time, once we're doing both, I got a problem. If I advocate for seniors, I'm effectively not advocating, actually going against that 35-year-old with a disability. I don't want to be in that position. I mean, so I would push strongly back against the idea, because we're an advocacy group. In other words, if our role was something else, where we were running the Mather Center, like we used to do over, on the other site, or we were doing something else and our role was something other than advocacy, I'd say fine, I mean, of course, but where our role is advocacy, I want to be completely focused, especially now that we have so many seniors. In other words, this baby boom bubble that's coming through, all these people need help and they need advocates. And so, and to be blunt, many people within the disability community already have. I mean, there's lots of advocates out there for the disabled.
Where do they live, saying, in Darien?
That's not the issue. The issue is there are people out there who are already advocating for those folks. There is nobody else advocating for the seniors in Darien. Okay. In other words, people in Stamford, okay, other than the AARP, okay, are in a position where they've got their own Commission on Aging. I'd argue we need to make sure that we keep our powder dry, keep our things ready for seniors, okay, so that we can be singularly focused. So again, I'd be glad to have reports from any group. I'd be glad to listen to whatever. I don't want to do anything to hurt the disabled. Please don't take it that way. But at the same time, I want to make sure we are laser focused on senior needs, especially given the sheer number of seniors who are going to be in Darien now and going forward.
To add to your point, I mean, what happened at the state level over the last couple of years has really been a disservice, I think, to seniors. But we have to remember that the combination of those agencies was because of economic conditions, and he decided to take, and we had a very, very good Commission on Aging at the state level, but we had to deconstruct it and mix it in with others. And it was more a matter of not having enough money to do it. It wasn't for any efficiencies or anything else. In fact, I think it's been detrimental long term, and I think we need to have the day again when we see that separation at the state level, as they are in so many other states. Again, we were forced to do that for financial reasons.
And to Peter's point, that's been done before, and we got the short end of the stick every time it's been done, and then we advocate to get it back out again for that, exactly for that reason. So, yeah, we hope it will be restored again.
Yep.
Okay. So at the town level, at least, I'd like to make sure that we keep our level of advocacy for the seniors, because that's what we do. We're advocates. Right? So. Okay. Other discussion on that point? Sorry, I didn't mean to don't create that, but I wanted to, since I wasn't here in April. Gina, tell us what's going on with At Home in Darien.
Sure. Last Friday night, we had our 10th anniversary celebration, and I want to thank everybody who helped to make it a great success. We raised some money at that event for benches, which we're going to donate to the town, most likely to Weed Beach, and we're hoping to create a senior-friendly area in the new development that they are planning down there at Weed Beach. On Sunday, September 29th, from 4 to 5 p.m., you're all invited to Weed Beach to unveil those benches and honor our volunteers that day. And the other thing that we're doing, Osteo Strong Darien is doing an event for Osteoporosis Awareness Month, which is also this month. And they are doing Tuesday, May 21st. They are having speakers, bone density scans, stretching, cryotherapy, hydromassage, and all sorts of things at their location at Goodwives Shopping Center. It's a 9 a.m. to noon event, and there's a ticket price for it, $20 a ticket, but they are donating proceeds to, a portion of the proceeds to At Home in Darien.
Great. Thank you. Questions for Gina? Thanks very much.
Sure.
Peter, what's going on with the state? I know you've got something there.
I do. To wrap up the tax returns, I just saw the number last week. The Darien Library did 1,015 returns this year. The year before was 880. And whereas last year the library was the most used library located ARP site, this was the most used ARP site in the state of Connecticut this year. And so again, the Darien Mathis Center has also been a source. So again, the plan will be to continue on with that. In looking at an update from ARP as of last night, there's so much in the air now with the bills starting to move out that I can't really give you a concrete report. Again, just to remember that all these issues, that the qualifiers on assets, for example, the family leave, it looks like the family leave bill is going to see the light of day, but it's not very clear yet as to what the components are going to be. There's still a lot of fights going on. ARP did suggest that I mention two events, one of which I think is relevant to us, and that is at Central Connecticut State University on June the 18th in New Britain, Connecticut. There's going to be a program, Livability at Any Age, and it's going to be dealing with housing and livable structures. And I have a copy, you could put this in the minutes of the note. And you can also find out more about it by going to AARP's website, which is AARP.com. AARP.cbent.com. The second one is, believe it or not, up at the casino. And there's going to be a program where Frank Abagnale at the Monhegan Sun is going to be doing an open program on fraud. And that's going to be on June the 6th. So again, if you want to spend some money, you want to have some fun.
That's a perfect place for the place.
You can see how the casinos might fraud you. No, only kidding. A couple of other things. Another big day for everybody's calendar in town is May the 29th. That's next Wednesday, May the 29th. Our library will be celebrating its 125th anniversary. Our library's been in place 10 years this year, but we tend to forget that the library's been in town a lot longer than that. And what they're going to do is they're going to do a 24-hour giving day. And what they'd love to do is have people actually come to the library, as more than 7,000 people did, I guess, when it opened that day, and have a piece of cake and celebrate, and maybe give a check and do that. So again, May the 29th, and it said 24 hours a day, but I'm sure it's just going to be library hours. But again, you can just go visit the library website. But again, something I think significant for town that, again, we ought to promote. And finally, the Historical Society as well. This is close for the folks watching on television, but Saturday, May the 18th, or a rain date for Sunday, May the 19th, because who knows, it might even rain.
No shocking.
They're going to have the Spirit of the American Volunteer, and they're going to have an ambulance from the First World War. And they have a whole program built around stories from ambulances and what it was all about. So I think that would be a pretty fun thing to do. So that's, as I said, right around the corner.
Very cool.
And again, just visit the DarrenHistorical.org site.
Nice. Thank you, Peter.
Yep.
Questions for Peter? Hearing none. Any other old business? Any new business? Hearing none. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you very much. Second? Thank you. All in favor? Thanks, everybody. Great meeting. Appreciate it.